Dudula is premised on hate. It is not an immigration movement, because if it was, it would be targeting all immigrants in South Africa, white or black. It is premised on hate on fellow black Africans. That's what it is. Their argument that Zimbabweans are taking our jobs and therefore we're going to deny them healthcare and access to education is premised on hate. Not even on xenophobia, because xenophobia implies fear of others. This is hate of others. I want to argue in this video that Zimbabweans actually are giving South Africans jobs and not taking jobs away from them. Hear me out. South Africa is Zimbabwe's largest trading partner. 43% of our trade is with South Africa. That totals to about $9 billion every year, with $7 billion of that being funneled into the South African economy. That is a lot of money. This is a half-eaten pack of Lays. Zimbabweans import about $20 million worth of Lays every month, an argument that Dudula will never tell you. In other words, Zimbabweans and their appetite for South African products is keeping South Africans' industries and factories alive. In other words, Zimbabweans, without ever stepping into South Africa, are keeping South African jobs. Without ever leaving, our shelves are 40 to 50% South African goods. Without ever leaving this country, without ever leaving my city, I am keeping a South African job alive. 4 million Zimbabweans travel into South Africa every year as tourists. SA Stats argues that for every 54 visits, it keeps one South African tourism job. You do the calculations for me how many jobs that is from Zimbabwean visits. And Dudula has got no idea what their fellow countrymen are doing in Zimbabwe. You have South African universities who are advertising big billboards down the road asking Zimbabwean students to come and study in South Africa. Do you know why? Because Zimbabwean students pay in cash. No subsidies, no grants. Down the road again, you find that South African tourism has got big billboards urging Zimbabweans to come into South Africa and holiday in South Africa. Why? Because they want some of that Zimbabwean cash. So, you tell me, who is giving the other a job here? I'm not trying to downplay the effects of migration and having an artificial population extended onto you. I'm not trying to downplay that. But the argument that Zimbabweans are exclusively taking away South African jobs is wrong. And I'm not even talking about the Zimbabweans who are already living in South Africa, who are paying for goods, buying rent, buying fuel, and paying for taxes. There are 4 million Zimbabweans in the diaspora. A majority of them, arguably, in South Africa. But Zimbabweans are economic migrants. The moment Zimbabwe starts to work, Zimbabweans will come back to their country. Most Zimbabweans have no permanent plan to live in South Africa or any part of the diaspora for a very long time. The moment this economy starts to work, in fact, Zimbabweans have been trickling in bit by bit over time. Zimbabweans will come back to their country and to this economy. They have no permanent plans to be South Africans. They just want either economic opportunity or bread and butter. South Africans have benefited greatly from Zimbabwean labor and expertise, from engineers to nurses to teachers and other sectors of their economy. Their arguments that Zimbabweans are simply straining South Africa and taking away their resources holds no water. And unfortunately, South Africans have taken that argument to heart, with no context and with no further research, because the moment you try and touch this argument, it falls apart on its own. Dudula is a hate movement. It is not an immigration movement. I can guarantee you, I've lived in South Africa, there are more illegal European immigrants in South Africa than there are Zimbabwean undocumented migrants. Trust me when I say that. But Dudula does not see that. They see color. And Dudula is a hate organization.
Zanzile's recent attendance at the soccer game between South Africa and Zimbabwe reveals once again the depth of a misplaced obsession with stoking division among Africans. For someone who has shown little or no interest in sports, her sudden enthusiasm for football seemed suspiciously selective, sparked only because the match involved Zimbabweans, a people she has made a career out of vilifying. What should have been a day of continental unity and joy, with fans from both nations singing, laughing, and cheering together, became for her yet another opportunity to spread bitterness and resentment. While television coverage and social media were flooded with images of South Africans and Zimbabweans sitting side by side, wrapped in their nation's flags and exchanging smiles, Zanzibar saw only hate. She claimed that South African fans moved away from Zimbabwean fans or their Zimbabwean counterparts out of disdain. A claim both false and revealing. It shows that her perception is not guided by truth but by a deep-seated desire to confirm her own prejudices. Her world is so consumed by hatred that even scenes of fellowship and unity are twisted into evidence of division. What Zandile fails to understand is that rivalry in football is not a sign of hatred. It's part of the game's very spirit. Rivalry creates excitement, competition, and identity for fans, but they rarely cross into true enmity. Take for example the long-standing rivalry between Orlando Pirates and Kaizer Chiefs supporters. These fans often exchange chants, tease each other, and even argue passionately. Yet, once the final whistle blows, they walk home together, share drinks, and return to being family and friends. The rivalry is symbolic, not hostile. It represents sporting pride, not hatred. But for Zandile, whose lens is clouded by animosity, even this healthy spirit of competition becomes evidence of division. She confuses rivalry with racism and passion with prejudice, exposing just how far removed from reality her worldview has become. This behavior is not only unbecoming of someone who calls herself a leader, but also profoundly dangerous. South Africa is grappling with unemployment, corruption, crumbling infrastructure, and a political class that has failed its people time and time again. Yet, instead of directing public anger and frustration towards those truly responsible, Zandile has chosen to scapegoat African migrants, particularly Zimbabweans, who share closer ancestral and cultural ties with South Africans than perhaps any other group on the continent. Her rhetoric distracts ordinary South Africans from confronting systemic failure and keeps them locked in circles of resentment against their own brothers and sisters. In doing so, she becomes not a leader but a manipulator, trading truth for populism and compassion for hate. What makes Zandile's conduct even more hypocritical is that she likely identifies as a Christian, a faith whose cornerstone is built on love, mercy, and neighborliness. Yet her words and actions stand in direct contrast to the parable of the Good Samaritan, a story that calls on believers to show kindness even to those they are thought to despise. To harbor such hatred for fellow Africans while claiming moral and spiritual authority is a height of contradiction. Ultimately, Zandile's crusade will not uplift South Africans, nor will it solve the problems she pretends to care about. Hatred has a way of devouring those who nurture it. If she continues on this path of division and hostility, the fire she is stoking against others will one day consume her, and by then it may be too late to rebuild the bridges she has burned. I come in peace.
I should just update you on this. The 10th of October was a soccer match between Zimbabwe and South Africa in Moses Mabhida Stadium. The attitude of South Africans towards foreigners, guys, we are sitting on a time-ticking bomb. South Africans were like, asifuni kuhlala nani, hambani niyohlala le. Now this was because of the attitude, the arrogance. Some Zimbabweans badelela, guys. South Africans are hurtful. It's gonna explode anytime soon. And
hey guys, Cyril Ramaphosa akawa give for tonight. Hey, he cares less. He blew Texas about his nephew and the billions that were stolen at the Tembisa hospital. He then goes, and strategically we must watch what this guy does on weekends, hey, because it goes right over our heads, or they think it does. Goes to Europe, to Ursula, to go ask for yet another loan for green energy that we don't even need. Almost 12 billion euros for Rindoni. We took the same loan in March 2025 of about 5 billion euros. And this was supposed to create jobs. You know, all of those nice jargons. There aren't any jobs created. We don't need this green energy. It means that we won't be able to industrialize. It is an oppression. Kwailonto. Uhambela kuyothatha loan, this guy. Ufuna ukugqibezela ezi billions. I know Cyril, guys. How is he still our president? How? Woo! I need to breathe. Guess who else was there to sell his country? Of course, Upoi. Traitor! The most useless organization. You know what? African Union must just deplete because there's no use for these things. Not only this nonsense, a few days before this, Ursula was being slammed by the parliamentarians in European Union Parliament. They are fed up with her. She tried to take a couple of hundred of billions, tried to do this rearming thing for their defense. They are scared. Let me show you. I can't even articulate myself today. I can't, because Ursula is a mess. Ursula is out here taking kids from their homes, boys, to go fight against in Russia. These people can't manage themselves. Inyoga ezidlayo. And we think they are our saving grace. Really? Priority is green energy when these people... You know what, maybe I'll make another video when I'm less pissed off, because sis Cyril, sis African Union, sis Paul, sis Ursula. I mean, no man, guys, no, we can't sit back and not do anything about these vampires.
There's something that we do as South Africans that I find to be very concerning. How we are always willing and ready to bully people on social media. I see it a lot with international visitors, where people say, "Uhamba nini?" That's rude, guys. That's rude. When people come to the country, you can't just assume that they won't leave. And even if they don't leave, some of them have good reasons not to leave. It's rude. And that why is it that South Africans are always so ready to fight with strangers on social media, to call people names, to insult them like this?